What's going on, everybody? Today I'm going to be going through a case study from one of my lifters, Bryant. Bryant and I have been working together for over a year and a half, so this is a really good example of how long-term data collection and long-term pattern recognition can inform programming adjustments when you find yourself in a unique or unexpected situation. So for some context on this case study, Bryant competed in October of 2021, and he had an awesome day that we were very pleased with. So he hit his third attempts on all three lifts. And importantly, I think these numbers were very reflective of his quote-unquote true strength on the day. So he had a 496 squat, 364 bench, and 617 deadlift. Then we had about 16 weeks to prepare for a meet on February 5th of 2022. And during that time period, we did two hypertrophy blocks and one peaking block. Now, I put the terms hypertrophy and peaking in quotes because it's really just a slight shift in bias. Even during those hypertrophy blocks, we're hitting heavy top sets of 1 to 3 reps in the 7 to 9 RPE range. So we're able to still get accurate estimated 1RM numbers so that we can look at those and look for trends, right? So first, we're going to look at the average estimated 1RM in the pre-peaking block. So what that means is basically 2 blocks out from the meet. So the block that happened right before the peaking block going into the meet, right? And if we look at the average estimated 1RM in the pre-peaking block going into the October meet, he had an average estimated 1RM of 476 on squat, 597 on deadlift, and 363 on bench press. Now I have bench highlighted in red there, and you can also see a good amount of week-to-week variability in those estimated 1RM numbers, and that's because we were dealing with some aches and pains that were popping up on bench press, so kind of take that with a bit of a grain of salt. Now, if we fast forward to the pre-peaking block going into the February meet, we can see a considerable improvement in average estimated 1RM, especially for the squat and deadlift. So squat's up to 496, deadlift is up to 627, okay? Bench is actually down slightly, but the reason I was still feeling good about bench press is because the exercise that the estimated 1RMs at this point were being taken from was a long pause bench press. Okay, and that's because we were trying to manage the workload so that we were sure that he could push really hard in the peaking block that was coming up. So we have these objective indicators of progress and this cycle-to-cycle comparison to indicate to us that things are going really, really well. And we also had subjective indicators of progress. Brian agreed that things were feeling really good. He was feeling really confident. And on my end, looking at training footage, loads that were typically a little bit slower for him were moving really fast. And he was also touching some top set loads that, he hadn't really touched at this point in a training cycle in previous training cycles. So we have both objective and subjective indicators of progress. Now, fast forward to the peaking block, okay? First couple weeks of the peaking block are still going really well, but then at about 2 to 3 weeks out, we start to get some indicators that things aren't going quite as well, and what I detected is that we were overreached, okay? So, again, going into the peaking block, all signs pointed to being considerably stronger. But when we look at some heavy singles kind of in that 2 to 3 week out range, that wasn't really reflected. So 2.5 weeks out for squat going into the October meet, he hit 475 at RP9. 2.5 weeks out going into the February meet, he hit basically the same load also at RP9. So basically the same. Bench was actually down a little bit. He hit 364 at 9.5 going into the October meet. And then he hit the same load actually at an RP of 10. And it moved slower than we were anticipating going into the February meet, and deadlift was slightly better, but not much, right? The same load moved at a 9 RPE instead of a 9.5 RPE. So we're just not seeing, what we had expected at this point, okay? But because we have these cycle-to-cycle comparisons and we know how things typically trend within our cycle structure, I knew that something was kind of off here, okay? Because the given workload I was giving him historically should not have caused him to overreach. We should have seen considerably higher loads here used on these sets 2 to 3 weeks out in the February peaking block, or the peaking block going into the February meet, but we just weren't seeing that. So for that reason, again, I suspected that something was off. because I was seeing these objective indicators of overreaching. And through talking with Bryant, we kind of realized that life stress was considerably higher than normal. Okay, so again, the overall training workload wasn't different in these two peaking blocks, but life stress was considerably higher, and I think that led to him being overreached. So because I suspected him being overreached and not truly being able to display his true strength due to fatigue masking it, really a good amount, I made some adjustments. So most importantly, I made the taper more aggressive and longer. So typically we do like a 1 week taper, maybe slightly longer, and this one was almost 2 weeks. And I also made it more aggressive in terms of the volume reduction and a slightly more aggressive reduction in intensity as well. We also had some discussions in terms of staying level-headed, right? I kind of explained to him what I thought was going on, and that I was pretty confident in it, right? And I wanted to make sure that he was still checking his boxes to the best degree he could outside of the gym, and he wasn't allowing, kind of that obstacle we ran into 2 to 3 weeks out get to him too much. And Bryant did an awesome job of trusting me and giving me feedback, giving me his input, and he always does an excellent job of staying level-headed and trusting the process. So that was a huge, huge help. We had to have more open-ended attempt selection as well. Because I suspected he was overreached, that inherently makes attempt selection a little bit less predictable. Typically, because I don't like to use overreaching as a strategy, in this case, we have a pretty dang good estimation of how strong you're going to be on the day. But because I suspected him being overreached, I was kind of like, hey, this taper might work really, really well, and I want you to be able to touch heavy loads and hit some PRs if it's there. But I'm also not 100% certain, so we're going to have to be dynamic on the day. Turns out he felt awesome. The taper worked really well. He ended up hitting PRs on all 3 lifts, going 9 for 9, 5.5 pound squat PR, 11 pound bench PR, and 11 pound deadlift PR for a 27.5 pound PR total. Right, so the more aggressive and longer taper really paid off, and Bryant did an excellent job of staying level-headed and kind of taking what was there on the day, which ended up being on the high end of what we predicted. So some takeaways here: cycle-to-cycle comparisons go a long way, right? Because I know what to expect at a certain point in a training cycle, and when that's off from what I'm actually seeing, we're able to be dynamic and kind of dig a little bit deeper, use that as a conversation starter, and figure out the best way forward at that point, okay? And as you can tell, I generally advocate for avoiding significant overreaching because it makes things a little bit less predictable, as I just outlined. But at the same time, in a peaking block, you're going to kind of be close to it no matter what, right? So there's always going to be a chance that it might happen, and you have to be dynamic if it does happen, okay? And again, once you have long-term training data and you're able to kind of see long-term patterns for that individual, you're able to more accurately be dynamic, okay? And actually, even though Bryant hit a squat PR, he had more in the tank than what he had on the day there. Now, a really big goal was to break that 500-pound mark, so Bryant kind of kept that goal center of mind in his attempt selection. But you can see here that this 502-pound squat moved really, really well. He had a good amount left in the tank, right? So again, this is kind of a reason why I'm not a huge fan of overreaching, because it makes things a little bit less predictable. So that's it. That's everything I wanted to go over, guys. If you have any questions, go ahead and drop them in the comments, and I'd be happy to chat further. But hopefully this was helpful and kind of gives you some food for thought in terms of long-term data collection.